I should say to people, this is Councillor Davis, that Councillor Straker-Wells has kindly agreed to chair the meeting because I'm not feeling very well, but I am able to participate, so we are cooperating.
Thanks. Michelle, it's 10 o'clock. Are we ready to go? Hello, Michelle.
I had a message to say we were live, Martin.
Okay,
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Councillor Martin Straker-Wells and will be chairing this hearing of Subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality while I outline the procedure? Can you also please turn off your cameras, with the exception of committee members, unless you are the person speaking? This is to reduce bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put your mobile phones on silent and ensure that they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or any unnecessary noise emanating from radios, TVs, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date under the regulations for these types of meetings. I can also confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. This meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast via the Council's meeting YouTube site. Members of the public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meetings. We have had no apologies, so I'll proceed to the minutes, which are the public part of the minutes for the meeting taking place on the 25th of October 2021. To note those minutes, please, can I have your agreement to those minutes being noted? Thank you. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 7th of February 2022.
Agreed.
To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 7th of February 2022. And to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 28th February 2022.
Agreed.
To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 7th of March 2022.
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I welcome you to this hearing for an application in respect of the licence for Marriott Mini Market Hockley Convenience Store, 28B Soho Hill, Birmingham, B19 1AA. I'll begin with some introductions. My name is Councillor Martin Straker-Wells, and I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Phil Davis and Councillor Bob Beecham. Also present in this meeting are the following officers. Licensing Officer Bipindra Nandra.
Morning, Chair.
Committee Manager Kate Townsend.
Good morning, Chair.
Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampillai.
Morning, Chair.
Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? First, the applicant, if they're present. Is any representation from the applicant present?
Paul Elson, Birmingham Trading Standards Authority.
Thank you. Next, those making representations. Mark Swallow, West Midlands Police. Mark Swallow, Mr. Swallow. Sharon Watts, Licensing Enforcement.
Morning, Chair.
Right, have we picked up Mark Swallow from the West Midlands Police yet?
Chair, it says that he's actually in the meeting.
I can see, yes, yeah.
I don't know if he's having difficulty unmuting.
Right. Mark, can you hear us? And can we unmute him centrally?
Chair, it says that he's unmuted now, but obviously we can't hear anything.
No, okay. Right. What do you propose, Kate? Do we try and get in touch with Mark Swallow?
Chair, what I will do is I'll remove him from the meeting.
Right.
And then if he can rejoin, and we'll see if that resolves the issues.
Okay. Members, thank you for your patience. And others, we're going to try and see if we can get Mark Swallow back into the meeting. It might take a few minutes. Thank you. Can you look?
Chair, he's left the meeting, but he hasn't rejoined yet, so we'll just wait a little longer.
Okay, thank you. While we're waiting for Mark Swallow to rejoin us, I don't want to tempt fate, but can I just double check? Paul Elson is here, Trading Standards.
That's correct, Chair. I'm here loud and clear.
Fabulous. Please stay there. And Sharon Watts, Licensing Enforcement.
Hello, Chair.
Thank you. So we're still just waiting for Mark Swallow from the West Midlands Police, and then we'll carry on. Kate, any sign of Mark Swallow?
No, Chair, not as yet.
The assumption is he's left the meeting and he's now trying to rejoin.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, I've just spoke to West Midlands Police. They've just had a power cut at Lloyd's house, so he should be rejoining anytime soon. The power's just come back on apparently, so if we give him another 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. That's a relief. Thank you.
I knew this was a baptism of fire for you.
I was just worried in case I'd pressed the wrong button. There you go.
Haven't they got any
Overloaded
batteries?
Lloyd House.
Haven't they got any batteries at Lloyd's house then?
So, Kate, how would he withdraw, rejoin by phone, or how would that work?
Presumably, Chair, if the power's back on, he'll just rejoin in the normal way.
Naturally, okay. Hi, Kate,
Yes,
any,
Chair.
any news?
No, Chair. As soon as he joins, I will let you know, but it will pop up on the screen once he's joined.
Sure, okay.
Chair, he's just joined.
Terrific.
Councillor, can you hear me now?
Welcome back, Mr. Swallow. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I've just had some technical difficulties for which I apologise.
And you have surmounted them, which is even better for us. Thank you very much. Good to hear from you. Right, so I'll assume everybody else is still in the meeting and we can carry on. I had just asked all parties to identify themselves. I'm going to do that again, just in case. First of all, Paul Elson, Trading Standards.
That's correct, Chair. I'm still here.
Mark Swallow, West Midlands Police.
Yes, present, Chair. Thank you.
Sharon Watts, Licensing Enforcement.
Hello, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Could I ask if any persons making representations wish to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing?
No, Chair.
I'll assume, therefore, that there are no withdrawals of representations. And can I just check something else? I'll assume that Councillor Davies is still with us.
Yes, I'm still there, Chair. If I may keep the camera off, though, please, given the circumstance.
Okay. Thank you. I will assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may, at my discretion, amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you all that any such amendments will not impact on the parties' right to a fair hearing. We will be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name in now? Officers will also type their job title. The meeting will not proceed until you have all done so.
Paul else from Trading Standards. I don't have facility for chat on my. Well, it's not currently working on my system, but obviously, will you be using the raising hand system? Thank you.
Right. Sorry. Tell me your name again. Sorry.
Paul Elson, Trading Standards.
Paul Elson. So we'll make a note of that if that's okay to Kate. Can I just check, Kate? Has everybody confirmed that they're able to access the chat except for Paul Elson?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Please keep the chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. If any participant has dialed in on an audio telephone rather than Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm that you can hear and be heard. With the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your cameras off unless you are the person speaking. If there are problems with bandwidth which cause difficulties with the sound, I may, at my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing "speak" into the chat function or using the raise a hand function now. Okay, thank you. I'll now briefly outline the procedure which we'll be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer, Bhupendra Nandra, will present the report. Then the applicant will be asked to present their case. We are asking for this to be kept approximately 20 minutes. I assume that the applicant is in fact not going to be present for this period. Am I right, Katie?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Next, those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can I ask all parties to speak as slowly and clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the meeting minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it is someone else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but we'll try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or by those present, they must signify this using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you're viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which questions are dealt with. So at this point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word "speak" into the chat function, and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at an appropriate moment. If at any time you cannot hear or have problems with your internal connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they have just said. It is therefore important that you use the chat function as soon as you are unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I will remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras when you are not the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in the meeting whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note that if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that the members need to clarify any point, you will be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. You will be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. So with that, can I ask the licensing officer, Bhupendra Nandra, to present the report, please, as slowly and clearly as you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Inspector of Weights and Measures applied on the 28th of February 2022 for a review of the premises licence under Section 51 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Marrow Mini Market trading as Hockley Convenience Store, 28B Soho Hill, Birmingham, B19 1AA. The purpose of the report is to consider an application to review a premises licence. Representations have been received from West Midlands Police and Birmingham City Council Licensing Enforcement as responsible authorities, which are attached at Appendices 1 and 2. The review application is attached at Appendix 3, the premises licence is attached at Appendix 4, and the site location plans are attached at Appendix 5. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to modify the conditions of licence, exclude a licensable activity from the scope of the licence, remove the designated premises supervisor, suspend the licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, revoke the licence, or to take no action. Where the authority takes a step to modify conditions or exclude a licensable activity, it may provide that the modification or exclusion is to have effect for only such period not exceeding 3 months or as it may specify. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And now could I call upon Mr. Elson to make your presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I shall try and keep this as brief as possible, but it may be about 20 minutes long, so please excuse me for that. On the 5th of October 2021, Birmingham Trading Standards Authority received a complaint from a member public about the premises known as Hockley Convenience Store 28B Soho Hill, Hockley B19 1AA. This is also the premises known as Rat Trading. Okay. The complaint was that it was allegedly supplying e-cigarettes and vaping products to persons under the age of 18 years old. This is an offence under the Nicotine Inhaling Products Regulations, Age of Sale 2005. On the 8th of October, I visited the premises of Hockley Convenience Store, identified myself to the man behind the counter and explained to him the reason for the visit and asked to speak to the manager or the licence holder for those particular premises. To be perfectly honest, the employee was extremely reluctant to call the manager. However, he did eventually do this. While I was waiting, I did notice that the premises were in a considerable state of disorder, with food products and produce scattered on the floor, cans of beer haphazardly strewn all over the area at the back of the premises. After considerable time passed, the manager did arrive. During this time, however, 3 customers came into the premises and specifically asked the employee behind the counter for single cigarettes. It is illegal to sell single cigarettes in this country to any person, man, woman or child. It doesn't matter. You can't break a pack of 20 open. I reminded the employee of the law relating to the sale of single cigarettes whilst at the counter, and the employee subsequently refused to make the sale. Have that happen while an officer is actually in the premises is very rare indeed, in my opinion, and I've only ever had it happen twice before in all the years I've been working here. Mr. Omani arrived and stated that he was the manager of the premises, the owner of the premises, and the premises licence holder, though he didn't actually have any relevant paperwork to prove this. There was no premises licence on display in the premises, and a copy of the licence could not be found anywhere on the premises. He certainly didn't have a copy with him. I explained to Mr. Ormani the reason for visit again and gave him a full information pack detailing the allegations and what his business needed to do. Now, saying that, that is very brief, but that actually took over 1 hour, 45 minutes to do that. He had a copy of a set of regulations called the Tobacco and Nicotine Inhaling Products Regulations, which I explained to him. Another pack about called Tobacco Licensing and Regulations and Labelling, about what type of tobacco products he could sell. Another one about alcohol. Again, that was gone through with him, and a general one to do with underage sales. I also provided him with a series of posters to display in the shop to do with Challenge 25. And as the committee may know, that's where if a person who looks under 25 attempts to buy an age-restricted product, in particularly alcohol, then they are challenged and should produce some form of ID. I reminded that Mr. Ormani that his Challenge 25 conditions was on the licence, and it should be abided by rather. I asked to see a refusals register on the premises. Didn't appear to be one anywhere, and both he and I had a look throughout the store and couldn't find anything. After about 2 hours, I finally left the premises, and I issued a traders notice to him along with the information pack. Now, that is an extremely long and detailed visit to do with a trader. I was extremely concerned about the premises, to say the very least, and because of that, I contacted my colleagues in the licensing authority to request a joint visit. On the 20th of October 2021, myself and Officer Watts, who is here today, revisited the premises. On arrival, I once again introduced ourselves to the staff member who had served us previously, or had been there previously when I'd visited the premises, and asked him to call Mr. Omani, the manager. Whilst we waited, I did observe there was an open pack of cigarettes on the counter. Again, this would indicate to me, in my experience, that there was a sales of single cigarettes going on in the premises, and none of the posters were up that I asked him to display. Eventually, Mr. Omani arrived, and Officer Watts inquired about the licence, as it appeared on the name on the licence was a Mr. Sirwan Rashid and not Mr. Omani. Mr. Omani said he had purchased the business with some partners. He didn't mention who they were, and that he was a licence holder, and Mr. Rashid had relinquished the licence for the premises. Officer Watts issued a notice relating to the visit and requested that Mr. Rashid to contact her. On the 25th of November 2021, Officer Watts was called by Sirwan Rashid, stating that he sent him paperwork to the licensing section concerning the premises licence. Officer Watts received no such paperwork. No such paperwork could be found in the licensing section, and Officer Watts has received nothing to this date. Following the contact by Officer Watts on the 30th of November 2021, Sirwan Rashid then requested forms to remove himself from the licence. Officer Watts sent them to him. However, to this date, once again, no further contact has been received from Mr. Rashid. He's not returned the paperwork and therefore is still the premises licensing holder. During November 2021, Trading Standards received further information that the premises were selling illegal tobacco to the public. On the 19th of January 2022, myself and Police Licensing Officer Chris Jones from West Midlands Police visited the premises to carry out an inspection for illegal and illicit products. We entered the premises at approximately 12:30 in the afternoon. As I entered the premises, I noticed that the same person was behind the counter who had been there on previous occasions, and noted he passed a large, big shopper type bag from underneath the counter. He thrust it into the arms of somebody who was obviously a customer, said something to her, and she immediately exited the shop. Now, it's only my supposition at this stage that that bag was full of illicit tobacco, but obviously I cannot prove that. I identified myself and Officer Jones, the member of staff, who gave his name as Mr. Gam. I then completed the necessary paperwork in order to carry out a full search of the premises. And I also asked Mr. Gam to contact the premises licence holder or the manager. Officer Jones proceeded to the rear of the retail premises. What happened next is quite unusual. Whilst I was completing the paperwork, and it usually takes about 5 or 10 minutes, Mr. Guam grabbed a black plastic bag from under the counter, ran out from behind the counter into the display aisles in the centre of the shop. I followed him and I eventually located Mr. Guam by one of the actual aisles. At this time, he was empty-handed. I asked him to return to the counter, then asked him where the bag was that he removed from under the counter and gone into the aisles of the shop with. He replied that he wasn't carrying anything. Well, I'd actually seen him carry it, so I don't know why he said that. The search notice was completed and the search was started. At 12:40 p.m, Officer Jones found the plastic bag on the floor under one of the aisles. This bag contained 12 packs of foreign labelled, old style and illegal tobacco. Such products are illegal in the UK and cannot be sold. The rest of the tobacco stock was checked on the gantry. All of that appeared to be in order. However, during the inspection, a large pack of 13 firework rockets were found just behind the counter on a display shelf. These were removed and I seized them as I had reasons to believe at that time that the premises did not have an explosive licence that's required to sell fireworks. Subsequently, Mr. Omani arrived and he was advised of the situation and what had been found in the premises. The illegal cigarettes and fireworks were seized and placed in the evidence bag. Mr. Omani was again unable to produce a copy of the premises licence or any paperwork pertaining to that licence. Officer Jones attempted to go through the CCTV footage to see if you could see the member of staff actually dumping the bag, and this footage did not appear to be working correctly and certainly wasn't recording at the time that we came in. Mr. Omani could not operate the system himself, which is strange because that's actually mentioned on the licence itself. So we decided then to issue the full search notice, a receipt for the items, and then we left the premises. Now, that's what's actually happened on the occasions of the visits. The tobacco found at the site would indicate to me that the actual information that we received was correct, that he was in fact selling illegal tobacco. Although we only managed to find a small amount, 12 packs in all, it is still a breach of the Standardised Packaging and Tobacco Products Regulations 2015 and the Tobacco and Related Products 2016. They cannot be sold or supplied within the UK. None of the tobacco that we found was in the correct packaging. None of it had mandatory health warnings on, and it is never intended to be sold within the UK. Selling and dealing in such illegal items is part of an underground criminal network, funding serious criminal enterprises and to cheat the revenues of money that's obtained from the duty on tobacco. Also, more importantly, it undermines legitimate businesses, and the provenance and the safety of such products are unknown. I did make checks with West Midlands Fire Service on the premises, and Mr. Sirwan Rashid did not have an explosive licence, and there was no licence connected to the premises. So there should not have been any fireworks whatsoever on those premises. You cannot sell fireworks for obvious reasons without a licence issued by West Midlands Fire Service. It is my opinion that Mr. Rashid had not complied with the licence objectives and the conditions on his licence, and he has not relinquished the licence to this date. The staff appear to be beyond the control of the licence holder, and the premises operates in a state of complete and utter confusion. But that is my personal opinion. Even when given the opportunity to correct these issues, which I'd obviously given Mr. O'Mahony at the very beginning, he didn't appear to grasp the legal obligations placed upon him, and his lackadaisical and arm's length approach to management has had dire consequences for both the premises and the surrounding environment. My recommendations are, quite apart from the fact that the legal tobacco trade avoids excise duty and there's a risk of the public and the community in general from selling these particular products, I personally believe, and I've said this before, that the licence granted by the council is a privilege and not a right. That privilege should ensure that citizens of Birmingham have confidence in the management of the shop, and the shop particularly engage in legal activity. My opinion is that this shop is not engaging in legal activity. Within that privilege, there are a series of obligations that ensure good practice, safety of the public, and the greater welfare and protection of the local community. None of these obligations are too onerous. Unfortunately, these premises cannot even reach the minimum standards required. Buying such goods from unknown sellers and sources without traceability at best shows a complete lack of concern, and at worst, highly dangerous. I therefore request that the actual committee removes a licence from this particular premises. On a note, I have last week received 3 rather strange phone calls from Mr. Rashid, and I don't know why they've decided to phone me. On the Tuesday, the Wednesday and the Friday, I haven't answered them. And I'm not sure what they were about, to be quite honest. I couldn't really decipher 2 of them. One of them mentioned something about a licence in his pocket and about what's going to happen here today, but that's all I could really understand. So I don't know if that has any particular pertinence on what's happened today, but that's my evidence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Else. I'll now invite questions from members. Councillor Beecham.
Thank you, Chairman. Early in your report, you said that he had the relevant papers for all the things that he should be doing. Do you mean he had them there, or do you mean you supplied them?
Well, when I mentioned originally, he didn't have them there. I supplied them, and that's why the original visit was so long, because I systematically went through every part of that leaflet, and as I said, it took just over 2 hours in the end to go through all that. So he had all the relevant information that he needed to comply in the future. He certainly didn't have any information there when I attended in the first place back on the 8th of October, but he was given all that information. But that information would have, or part of that information would have been on the licence anyway, but he couldn't find the licence and he had no idea what was on that licence either. The only person who had a licence on that day was actually me, because I printed one off the internet.
Yeah, thank you. And just at the end of the whole business, you say you had 3 telephone calls from him, and then you said you didn't understand them or they weren't relayed to you. Why is this, if he's phoning 3 times to try and get you, that you don't have the information he's trying to give you?
I don't know. They came in last week. They're on my answer phone service. I mean, he shouldn't be contacting me anyway. He should have contacted the licensing section. I couldn't, to be honest, I couldn't decipher them. They were rather rambling. All I managed to pick up the fact that he had there was something to do with the license in his pocket, and I don't know what particular relevance that had, and that there was a committee meeting here today. So I don't know. Don't know why he decided to contact me. There's nothing I could have said to him, because those papers have been served 28 odd days ago when this application went in.
Served by whom?
Presumably by the licensing committee, they put in a blue notice, okay, and then my report goes in. It goes to licensing, the police, the fire service, other people on the committee, and they ask for applications. And on the blue poster, and I think the licensing officer may have explained more, there is a relevant section for the person who my report is against, for them to contact the licensing section. He shouldn't be contacting me for obvious reasons.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beecham. Councillor Davies?
Nothing from me, Chair, no.
Just one question from me, Mr. Elson. It's concerning fireworks. My assumption is that licensing fireworks is for the protection of the shop as well as for anybody coming in, and that there are certain regulations under which they have to be kept to ensure that they are safe. And my question is prompted by your use of the term explosive fireworks. Could you comment on that? You're suggesting that there were fireworks on the premises, that the premises was not licensed to do that, but were they in an unsafe situation?
I don't mean to sound impertinent. You have to excuse me. All fireworks are unsafe because they're explosives. That's the bottom line. And because they're explosives, there's regulations that affect them that's both enforced by ourselves, West Midlands Police and the Fire Service. The actual licence is granted by the West Midlands Fire Service to ensure that the person who sells the actual fireworks knows what the law is, and that would be particularly safe storage, how they can be stored, how long they can be stored for, and more importantly, who they can be sold to. And that is basic. And of course, the fire service also need to know if there is an emergency, if they go out to premises, that there is fireworks there. These fireworks were particularly large rockets, which is unusual to have in a small corner shop at that time of year, and more unusual to have them just lying on top of the counter. The reason for the license there that is issued is one of the parts is the storage. So all live fireworks, that is live explosives, should be stored away from the public. And I don't know if you, when you go into say a firework premises at bonfire night or whatever it is, you'll see that all fireworks now are stored behind glass cases in the shops. There's an weight that they can store on the premises, and where they can store that weight and how they should be stored. That's why that license is issued. Okay, you should not have fireworks lying about all over a premises, because at the end of the day they are explosives, and they're covered by the 1875 Explosives Act and various other pieces of amended legislation through the years. Does that make that clear?
In relation to that, can I ask, Chairman, these fireworks that you say were all over the place? Is that sort of exaggeration?
No, it's not.
These were for sale.
They were for sale because they were lying on top of where the suites were. So you had as a long counter in the premises. There's lots of sweets and other bits and bobs on the counter, and they were just lying across the top of the counter.
How many are we talking about? Is it a personal amount of fireworks, or is it masses of them and exactly the same fireworks?
No, it was one pack. It was 13 large rockets. We're not talking about the smaller rockets. We're talking quite large rockets. So that's probably top. All fireworks are divided into classes 1, 2, 3, and 4. These, I would say, are probably between class 2 and class 3. So they're quite a large firework to have in such an unusual premises, to say the very least. Most of those fireworks, in my experience, and I know a lot about fireworks, tend to be in specialised fireworks shops at firework time, for want of a better time. It's unusual to come across such a large pack of rockets in a very, very small shop, particularly that time of year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beecham. Thank you, Mr. Elson. And now could I ask Mr. Swallow from West Midlands Police to make your representation, please.
Thank you, Chair. West Midlands Police support the representations made by Birmingham Trading Standards Service regarding Marrow Mini Market trading as Hockley Convenience Store, 28B, Soho Hill, Hockley, B19 1AA, licence number 4497. The representation is supported under the Prevention of Crime and Disorder, Protection of Children from Harm, and the Protection of Public Nuisance and Promotion of Public Safety licensing objectives. The evidence submitted by Trading Standards clearly shows that this premises are supplying non-duty paid cigarettes, supplying fireworks without a licence to do so, and that the CCTV system at the premises is not working, which is in breach of the operating conditions of the premises licence. Licence 4497 was granted to Mr. Sirwan Rashid on the 10th of October 2018. He is both the premises licence holder and the designated premises supervisor for the premises. This licence allows for the off-sale of alcohol between the hours of 0600 in the morning to 0200 hours the next morning each day. And there are operating conditions in relation to the training of staff, signed re-alcohol sales, a record of attempts to purchase alcohol by under 18s, the provision of a working CCTV system, a refusals book, an incident book, and the operation of the Challenge 25 system at the premises. On the 5th of October 2021, Birmingham Trading Standards received a complaint from a member of the public that the premises was selling e-cigarettes to persons under the age of 18, which is an offence. As a result of that, on the 8th of October 2021, Enforcement Officer Paul Elson visited the premises. He identified himself to the male serving behind the counter and asked to speak to the manager of the premises or the premises licence holder. The member of the staff reluctantly called the manager. Premises were in, as you've heard, a state of disorder, with produce scattered over the floor, cans of beer strewn around the rear of the premises. The manager took a considerable time to arrive at the premises, and in this time, 3 customers asked to be served single cigarettes, which were refused after Mr. Elson reminded the member of staff that it is an offence to make such sales. Eventually, Mr. Soja Aldin Umani arrived at the premises and identified himself as the manager, owner of the business, and premises licence holder. He couldn't provide any documentary evidence to support that. There was no premises licence on display in the premises as prescribed by the Act, and Mr. Omini could not find a copy of the licence at all. Officer Elson provided Mr. Omini with leaflets in regard to the sale of cigarettes, e-cigarettes, alcohol and underage sales. Mr. Omini was reminded of the Challenge 25 policy, which is an operating condition of the licence, which Mr. Omini seemed to have no knowledge of. And he couldn't produce the refusals register, which is also a condition of the licence to have. He was issued a trader's notice. On the 20th of October 2021, Officer Elson and Officer Watts from Birmingham City Council Licensing Enforcement revisited the premises. None of the posters left were on display. The same member of staff was serving and was asked to call Mr. Ormany again. There was an open packet of cigarettes on the counter indicating the sale of single cigarettes. When Mr. Ormany arrived, he was questioned in regard to Mr. Rashid being named on the licence and stated that he and his partners had purchased the business and Mr. Sirwan had relinquished the licence. Officer Watts issued a notice of the visit and requested Mr. Sirwan contacted her to clarify the issues. On the 25th of October 2021, Mr. Sirwan contacted Officer Watts and stated that he'd submitted the paperwork in relation to the licence. He was asked to provide copies but did not, and on the 30th of November 2021, Mr. Rashid requested the forms in relation to the premises licence. These have not been submitted. In November 2021, Trading Standards received further information that illegal tobacco was being sold from the premises. So on the 19th of January 2022, Officer Elson revisited the premises in company with Police Licensing Officer Christopher Jones. As they entered the premises, the same member of staff produced a large carrier bag from behind the counter and gave it to a customer whilst speaking to her. She immediately left the premises. Mr. Elson began speaking to the member of staff, but he grabbed a black plastic bag from under the till area and disappeared into the aisles area of the shop. When he was located, he no longer had the bag and denied any knowledge of it. Officer Jones found the plastic bag secreted under the shelf display in the aisles, and it contained 12 packets of old-style, foreign-labelled packs of cigarettes. A pack of 13 firework rockets were also discovered behind the counter, and subsequent checks revealed that the premises were not licensed to sell those products. Officer Jones attempted to view the CCTV from the shop, and in order to do this, enlisted the help of Mr. Ormany, who had now arrived at the shop, but he also could not make it work, which is against the operating conditions of the premises licence. Mr. Ormany still could not produce the premises licence or anything in relation to it. None of the packets of cigarettes had excise paid on them and so are illegal to sell in the UK. The safety of these products is also not proven. So those products, A, could be dangerous, and secondly, take money away from the exchequer, which are used to provide services for the people of this country. This is not a faceless crime. It is believed that the premises are selling single cigarettes illegally. The premises has non-duty paid cigarettes and has fireworks without a licence to do so. Fireworks, as you've heard, are an explosive product and therefore are dangerous and should be kept within certain regulations to ensure the safety of both the staff and the public. The premises licence holder and DPS would appear to have nothing to do with the premises, and the manager has never been there when the premises have been visited on 3 occasions. Breaches of the operating conditions of the premises licence have been highlighted, including not having a refusals book at the premises, not having the short form of the licence, and not operating Challenge 25. As a result of this, West Midlands Police have no confidence in the management of the premises to promote the licensing objectives and would request the premises licence is revoked and the DPS is removed. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow. I'll now invite questions from members. Councillor Beecham.
Thank you, Chairman. Am I on? Yes. Do you say short form of the licence? Can you clarify that for me, please?
Yes, certainly, councillor. Thank you for the question. In every premises that's a licensed premises, there should be a copy, a shortened version of the licence on display in the premises for all to see and view.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And that's all, Chairman.
Councillor Davies.
Nothing from me, Chair.
Thank you. And nothing from me either, Mr. Swallow. Thank you very much indeed. And now, can I ask Ms. Watts from Licensing Enforcement to make a presentation?
Thank you, Chair. The Trading Standards have requested a review of the premises licence in respect of Marrow Mini Market, 28B, Soho Hill, Birmingham, B19 1AA, and the grounds for review relate to the following licensing objectives: to the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance and protection of children from harm. And Birmingham City Council Licensing Enforcement wish to support this review. On the 12th of October 2021, a request was made by Trading Standards to Licensing Enforcement requesting to carry out a joint inspection at the premises of Marrow Mini Market, 28B, Soho Hill. As a result of this request, on the 20th of October 21, In company with Trading Standards, a Licensing Act inspection was carried out by myself at the premises of Marrow Mini Market. The licence holder and designated premises supervisor, Mr. Sirwan Ibrahim Rashid, was not on site at the time of inspection. A man attending the premises, giving his name as Mr. Shojul Din Ormani, stated that Mr. Sirwan Rashid was transferring the business to him and Mr. Rashid was no longer at the premises. Mr. Ormani stated that he did not have a personal licence. The premises summary licence was not displayed at the premises and the premises licence could not be produced. Conditions on the licence were also not being complied with. Mr. Sirwan Rashid appeared to have no day-to-day control of the premises in respect of the premises licence number 4497. He hadn't authorised any person to sell alcohol in his absence and there was alcohol on display at the time of the inspection. As a result of this, a trader's notice was issued for the attention of Mr. Sirwan Rashid, outlining the non-compliances and a request for Mr. Rashid to contact me to discuss the outstanding matters. On the 25th of November 21, Licensing Enforcement received a telephone call from Mr. Rashid due to having no contact from him. Licensing Enforcement contacted Mr. Rashid. Mr. Rashid stated that he wasn't happy to receive the telephone call, as that in November 2020 he'd sent paperwork into the licensing offices informing that he was no longer at the shop. There were no records recorded, however, on the licensing SOPRA system to confirm this had been done. So Licensing Enforcement informed Mr. Rashid that records showed that he was still the licence holder and the DPS for Marrow Mini Market, and therefore he was responsible for anything that went on at those premises. He was requested to forward any copies of paperwork that he stated he'd sent into licensing in November 2020. On the 30th of November 21, Licensing Enforcement sent a message to Mr. Rashid via a text informing him that he had not provided them with the copies of any paperwork relating to the request from the phone call previously. And as such, he still remained responsible for the premises licence 4497 and was responsible for any ongoings at that premises. Mr. Rashid responded to the text messaging by requesting if he could remove himself from the licence. As a result of this, he was subsequently provided with a link, which would be to complete a surrender of licence form and then requested to return this to the licensing section. On the 2nd of December 21, Mr. Rashid sent a text message to Licensing Enforcement stating that he had completed the surrender of licence form and returned it to the licensing section. On the 15th of December 21, Mr. Rashid sent a further text message to licensing requesting confirmation that the licence had been cancelled. On the 16th of December 21, Mr. Rashid was informed by Licensing Enforcement that his request to surrender the premises licence had not been received. He was asked to provide details of where and when the information was sent, but no further correspondence was received from Mr. Rashid, and he still remains the premises licence holder and designated premises supervisor for Marrow Mini Market at 28B Soho Hill. In light of the above, it would suggest that Mr. Sirwan Rashid is no longer running Marrow Mini Market and does not have day-to-day control of the business, even though his name still remains on the licence and therefore makes him responsible for any activities taking place on the premises and breaches of any licence conditions. Licensing Enforcement do not have any confidence that the licensing objectives are currently being upheld. Mr. Shojan De Ormani, who is apparently now running the shop, is not a personal licence holder and does not have any authorisation to carry on licensable activities. And as such, Licensing Enforcement support Trading Standards in their representations to review the premises licence, and I would request that the licence be revoked. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. I'll now ask members. Councillor Davies, if you have any questions.
Nothing from me, Chair.
Councillor Beecham.
Thank you, Chairman. Crime and disorder being one of the listed things that shall not take place. Have you any notice from anyone that there is crime and disorder to this?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. The reason why that has been put in as objective, it's from trading standards, and it's in terms of the offences which appear to have been committed in respect of the cigarettes, the electronic vapes, and the sale of fireworks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No further questions, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just one question from me, and it really is about the surrender of licence form, which is obviously something that has to be completed, but also has to be received. Can I just double check? No evidence was ever received that the wish of the DPS to surrender the form was sent either by email or by post?
Yes, that's correct. To my knowledge, there's no record on our licensing SOPRA system to say that that information was received by General Licensing, and also speaking through text with Mr. Rashid, he was never able to provide me with any confirmation or any proof that this information had ever been sent.
And therefore responsibility, authority and accountability for the proper functioning of the shop according to the licensing objectives remained with the person whose name, if you like, was still on the license. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Right. Now I would ask if any of those who've made representations wish to make a final submission. Would anyone, would either Mr. Elson, Mr. Swallow or Ms. Watts like to make a final representation by way of summing up?
If I may, Chair, Paul Elson, Trading Standards, I'd just like to a brief summing up. I certainly can't add to what my colleagues in licensing or the police have said. It is quite a lengthy story, but I would point out that both trading standards and licensing couldn't have done any more in this particular case. We visited the premises, we gave them all the information they needed to comply, both myself and Officer Watts, and then Officer Watts also gave them ample opportunity to rescind the license or surrender the license, and they couldn't do that. To me, that shows complete lack of control of the business, and it seems to operate in a complete state of confusion. And that's all I can really say. All the years I've been doing this job, and I've been doing it over 30 years, this is by far one of the worst premises I've been in. The sheer fact that nobody seems to know who's in charge, who operates the business, or who actually owns the business. So I think that is a real problem for the community in general in that particular area. Thank you.
Elson, Mr. Swallow, have you any final submission?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to say the premises licence holder, also the DPS, appear to have no links at all to these premises. Mr. Ormany, who's been identified as the person in charge, hasn't made any attempts in this time to legitimise his ownership of the premises. The operating conditions attached to the licence haven't been followed, and the licensing objectives have not been promoted. Despite a number of attempts to work with the premises haven't promoted the licensing objectives and give no indication that that will change. I therefore request that the premises licence is revoked and the DPS is removed as the only course of action that is appropriate in in these circumstances. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Swallow. Ms. Watts?
Thank you. I'd like to agree with what West Midlands Police have said and trading standards, and I'm confident to say that the premises licence holder and designated premises supervisor does not appear to have any day-to-day control or wish to have anything to do with this business. And that's from obviously the conversations I've had with him on the telephone and via text messaging. I don't understand why he's chosen not to surrender the licence when he's been given ample opportunity, and especially as he was informed that any offences committed at those premises would be due to himself, being as he was the current licence holder and designated premises supervisor. I can only suggest that the licence be revoked. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watts. Thank you all for your representations. I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the committee makes its decision. You will be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you very much indeed. Can I